Greetings, Lucky Legends. My name is Lucky. This is Lucky Lad TV. I'm your host for this video. And it is time for a very much anticipated episode of Lucky's Top 7. First of all, it's like the return of the series, but also it's because this is a really big episode in that it's Lucky's Top 7 UCL Drafts. And this is something that actually a lot of people asked me to do. I was/am a writer for the GBA, the Global Battle Association, and of course the UCL just came to light. It was announced relatively recently. They did the draft. The first week of battles goes up this coming Saturday, the 25th, and I wanted to, sort of not strut my stuff. I don't know why that came to mind, but I wanted to sort of make my statements regarding the UCL and its drafts. And there's, I think it's a really cool looking group of people. It's a lot of really great people. I know a few of them personally. I know the rest of them I just know from watching their videos and stuff like that. But I think it's going to be very, very, very interesting to see how this sort of format goes out. And I'm going to explain all that to you guys in just a second. So before I read all this stuff, a couple things about how the draft went is that it was 2 days of drafting and it was about 6 hours per day, so about 12 total hours of drafting. And the way that it works is that there are 16 teams, and each team was given the chance in a snake-style draft with randomized order to draft 3 Pokemon from OU, 3 Pokemon from UU, 3 Pokemon from RU, and 3 Pokemon from NU. And basically, you'll see the Pokemon on the teams that I think have the top 7 drafts. But basically, the way that I looked at it is that I did Lucky's total score, which means each Pokemon is given a rating out of 10 as an individual. Meaning, take Landorus Therian. Landorus Therian gets a 10 out of 10. The ratings are pretty generous. I don't really go into it too much. I just say, how much work will this Pokemon be able to put in? And Landorus Therian puts in a huge amount of work. Then, if there was, maybe another Pokemon that wouldn't get as high of a rating, I don't think it was drafted, but if somebody drafted Shuckle, that Pokemon would get, a 4, because Shuckle isn't good. I don't even think it's in any of those tiers. But then I add all 12 of those ratings together, and the sum out of 120, which is the potential maximum, is Lucky's total score. All teams that you're going to see today are over 100, which means that the average was... Actually, they're all over 108. They're 108 or higher, which means that on average, each Pokemon had about a rating of 9 or higher. Another important factor, and this is what kind of differentiated between, there were some teams that had higher total scores that aren't on this list. There may have been a team with a score of 115 that isn't on this list because even though their Pokemon added up really well, as a team as a whole, they weren't as good, because type cohesion is a thing. Is the team as a whole cohesive? Are there multiple shared weaknesses? Does the team lack certain resistances? Those are things that you're going to hear me explain in the video. Physical special split. Does the team display a good balance between physical and special Pokemon regarding both offense and defense? Do you have a reliable physical wall? Do you have a reliable special wall? Do you have a reliable physical sweeper? Do you have a reliable special sweeper? Some teams are really heavily physical, some are really heavily special. And there's a bunch of different, possibilities. And then the bulk and speed split. It's kind of ironic coming from me, given how I build in the bulky method, where I kind of ignore speed. But being able to take a hit is important, as I always say. But being able to outspeed your opponent could also play an important factor, and that's very much true. When I build in the bulky method, I ignore speed. However, as you see from watching my Wi-Fi battles, I get outsped most of the time, because I just ignore speed. I'm not worried about it because I know I can take a hit. However, if you want to gain a lot of momentum, sometimes being able to outspeed your opponent is very important. The way that I generally like to battle is to sort of gradually whittle down my opponent and then take them out in sort of like one fell swoop there at the end. But if you want to maintain momentum throughout the battle as a whole, then you're going to need some faster Pokemon. So with that, we're going to get on into number 7, who I think had the 7th best draft out of the UCL. And it is Twit and the Grand Canyon Greninjas. One important thing that you need to note: the rankings of these have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the Wi-Fi battling skills of the coaches. For example, one of the coaches is Shady Penguin. Another one of the coaches is PokeAim MD. They're both known as very good, and another coach is A-Drive, Nips. They're all known for being really good Wi-Fi battlers. Then you have people like, Patters, you have people like Game Boy Luke, you have people like Feint Attacks, you have people like Cuddle of Death, and people like Twit. They don't upload that many Wi-Fi battles. They're not known for being Wi-Fi battlers. So that was something that I had to exclude from this because it would be very biased if I looked at the coaches, not the drafts. Because this is about the drafts. It's not about the coaches. Like, some people can say that, like, the best team isn't going to have the best record because behind every team is a coach. And the coach has to lead the team in the best way possible. And it's important to remember that, you know, coaches have an effect on the team. So for as good as the team may be, I can't say anything about the coaches. So please remember that this has nothing to do with the coaches. That said, I am going to be telling you who the coach is because, you know, I think it's kind of cool to know who drafted who. So the Grand Canyon Greninja is, of course, coached by Twit. From the OU bracket, they got Rotom Wash, Altaria, which was later announced as the Mega, and Alakazam. From UU, they drafted Nidoking, Mandibuzz, and Empoleon. From RU, they drafted Emboar, Escavalier, and Cofagrigus. And from NU, they drafted Bouffalant, Hariyama, and Ursaring. And as you see, Lucky's total score is 108 out of 120. So it's an average of 9. Going through each of these, Rotom Wash, all of the Pokemon drafted were good choices. The Pokemon that I'm not as sure about, that I think got a little bit lower ratings, are Bouffalant, because it's extremely slow, and unless you Scarf it, there's nothing you can really do to make it that much faster. And it doesn't have the same type of bulk that Hariyama does, so it's not like it has that sort of advantage to it. Emboar, same kind of thing with Emboar. It's not that fast. However, it does have a really interesting move pool, so you can catch a lot of people off guard with it. And Mandibuzz is also kind of a one-trick pony. It's, you know, it's a defogger with Roost. It's really, really fat. But then you have some really interesting choices. Pokemon that can run like an infinite number of sets, like Mega Altaria. Mega Altaria can be run physical. It can be run special. It can be run physically defensive. It can be run specially defensive. It can be run as a setup sweeper. It can be run as a regular sweeper. It can do a lot. And on analysis of this team, we see that there's no rapid spinning. Twit's team can't rapid spin, which is, of course, a problem because rapid spin is better than defog because it doesn't get rid of the hazards that you put up yourself. So we see that. We do see a Magic Guard Alakazam potentially, so a little bit of help with that, with those hazards, and we do see Defog from the Mandibuzz. I believe Empoleon gets it as well, and Altaria probably gets it too. However, Altaria and Mandibuzz are both weak to Rock, at least until Altaria Mega evolves. So they would be taking decent chunks of damage switching in on the Rocks just to get rid of them. Other important things that we see is not too many overlapping weaknesses. I didn't have anything noted in the back of my head. We see, you see that triple fighting weakness. However, you have an immunity from Cofagrigus, and you have a resistance from Nidoking. Alakazam, I don't trust to take a hit, but once Altaria Mega evolves, that also resists the fighting. So, pretty decent type cohesion there. Decent ice weakness that you see from Altaria, Nidoking, and Mandibuzz right there, but Empoleon will eat up ice hits for days. And Escavalier will probably take him too. Hariyama also gets Thick Fat, so another answer to that right there. So that's kind of my take on the Grand Canyon Greninjas. A very good draft. No, large holes there. Up next is the Durham Druddigons, coached by Elmas the Show-Off, Leodon, if you know him by that. Again, same score, 108 out of 120. OU, right off the bat, he got Charizard, first round. And Charizard was one of the, top priorities on a lot of people's lists. Like, a lot of people wanted to grab Charizard, he grabbed it first. He also grabbed the Azumarill, which, as you know, is terrifying. It, of course, has access to Belly Drum, and it's really fat. It has base 100 HP, I believe. And then Thundurus Incarnate, which it's something that you see a lot in VGC. It has Prankster Thunder Wave. I think it has access to Tailwind, but it also has Switch Initiative with that Volt Switch, and it also has access to Thunder Wave. It's pretty fat too. Then you get into the UU tier, and you see Cresselia and Gligar, which produces a pretty big knockoff weakness, but Charizard X, with that pretty high physical defense, can deal with that, because, of course, its item can't be knocked off. Mienshao, one of my favorite Pokemon, great fighting type, Life Orb Regenerator, one of my favorite sets. It has Iron, Fake Out, Drain Punch, U-Turn, and Knockoff on my Mienshao. You can go Fake Out, Knock Off, and then U-Turn out, and that'll take down most Pokemon, and you get all your health back that you lost from the Life Orb. Then down in RU, Rotom, Mow, Drapion, and Braviary, we see great Switch Initiative right there. A really nice Volt Turn core with Rotom, Mow, and Braviary. It is a Ice weakness with both of them. We also see that large Ice weakness with Gligar. It's double weak. We see an Ice weakness from Thundurus Incarnate. However, the rest of the team kind of handles that Ice weakness. Azumarill will eat up Ice hits because it's really fat. Miltank has access to Thick Fat, and Lantern is a great special wall that naturally resists Ice. You also see Tauros right there. Tauros is very, very fast. I think it has base 110 speed. It's a lot faster than most people give it credit for. And it has access to Sheer Force, so it does a lot of damage. Braviary also has access to Sheer Force. My former mascot, I know what it can do. It has base 123 attack, I believe. It hits like a truck. And then, of course, you have Drapion, which is, it's only weak to ground. And it has access to Focus Energy, Sniper, I believe. But the cool thing about Drapion is that if it does get access to Focus Energy, which I'm not 100% sure about, you don't actually have to run the Scope Lens, because instead you can run moves like Cross Poison and Night Slash, which naturally have a raised crit chance. So with that sort of combination right there, you can run another item on Drapion, like Leftovers or a Citrus Berry, so he can survive longer. Again, no huge glaring weaknesses that I really see. No steel type on the team, but the poison weakness isn't too bad. The only mons that are weak are Azumarill and Rotom-Mow. And, you know, Cresselia can kind of handle any poison types that want to peek through. Fairy weakness is not that bad either. You have Mienshao, and that's actually it now that I'm looking at it. And the ground weakness isn't excessive either because you have a Levitator, you have 2 Levitators, and 3 Flying Mons, so ground's not going to be an issue at all. So that's my piece on the Durham Druddigon, so I'm going to move on to number 5. Number 5 is the Philadelphia Feraligators, coached by PK Sparkstat Hotness. As you see, they have a total score of 110 out of 120, a little bit better than, you know, the 108. It's, you know, not that big of a difference, though. Garchomp, which in the OU tier, Garchomp, of course, works as a great physical wall with Rocky Helmet and Rough Skin. Combined, that's 4 physical hits to take down any given Pokemon. You have Talonflame, Priority Brave Bird with Choice Band, of course, tears through stuff. It also has Switch Initiative. Garchomp can, of course, also be run, you know, offensively. It can also be run specially offensively, not as successfully as its special attack is lower than its physical attack, but nevertheless, it still puts in some work. And then, of course, Skarmory, one of the most physically fat mons that you can really find, and it has very few weaknesses. It's weak to fire. It's weak to electric, and I think that's actually it. Fire and electric, because it's not weak to ground and it's not weak to fighting. I think fire and electric is it. Then we go down to UU. We see Mega Sceptile, one of the fastest megas, one of the hardest hitting megas. Of course, has that lightning rod for that electric immunity. Regular Sceptile is nothing to, you know, nothing to ignore either. Then, of course, Feraligatr, which now has access to Sheer Force, Dragon Dance, Life Orb set is very common. It will tear through teams. It has a very good move pool. It has access to Ice Punch, Waterfall, it has access to Crunch, it has access to a bunch of other moves too. I think it gets Brick Break. It probably gets Aqua Jet for some priority as well. Facade, of course, a personal favorite of mine. Then you have Snorlax. Snorlax sort of, you know, when you run a max defense Snorlax, it's like impossible to one-shot. It's so fat. Snorlax also gets access to the Thick Fat ability, which is, you know, a really good ability. Gets rid of a fire and an ice weakness. Snorlax also gets access to Belly Drum, and it's even fatter than Azumarill is. But Snorlax is extremely slow. However, you know, kind of makes up for that with its, you know, unkillable nature. It's also a great Curse Mon, setting up curses, raising its attack and defense. If you run max HP, max special defense, and you can get a free curse off, you can curse up like 2 or 3 times, rest with the Chesto Berry, and then, you know, you have 2 attacking moves that can tear through a team. From RU, we have Steelix, Trevenant, and Hitmonchan. Hitmonchan with access to Rapid Spin. It also has that Iron Fist ability. Makes it, you know, very dangerous. It has, you know, access to the Elemental Punches. It has access to, I think it gets Drain Punch. I know it gets Mach Punch, it gets Bullet Punch, it gets Fake Out. It has huge coverage. Trevenant, of course, one of the scariest mons in RU. The substitute set that Shady Penguin kind of pioneered almost is, you know, it's very common and it's very dangerous. Steelix, of course, one of the most physically defensive Pokemon in the game. A great Stealth Rock setter. Then you have Garbodor, Jinx, and Vivillon. All sort of, you know, emergency picks in my opinion. PK had... Vivillon was definitely an emergency pick because, you know, it doesn't really... Vivillon's good, but it's not great. The double rock weakness causes a lot of issues. Jinx is also weak to rock. You do have a reliable Rapid Spinner on PK's team. Hitmonchan can Rapid Spin. very reliably because it resists that rock. So it can switch in without taking that much damage. Garbodor is fat. It can take hits. One of the things you do see on this team is that, generally speaking, Garchomp, Talonflame, Skarmory, Feraligatr, Snorlax, Steelix, Trevenant, Hitmonchan, Garbodor, all 9 of those Pokemon are generally run physical, which would mean that Vivillon, Jynx, and Sceptile, Mega Sceptile, are PK's only, standard, specially offensive Pokemon. So the physical to special ratio doesn't seem that great. He also doesn't seem to have, any extremely... Actually, no, I take that back. He has Snorlax and he has Trevenant. I was about to say he doesn't have any extremely specially defensive mons, but that's just because I usually run Snorlax physically defensive because I can. But Snorlax has base 110 special defense and I believe base 160 HP. You can put an Assault Vest on that thing, it'll never die. At least from special hits. It averages out, I think, to be fatter than Goodra, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. But other than that, decent fairy weakness. No, not a decent fairy weakness. That was somebody else. I believe there was one weakness that I remember looking at PK's team and seeing that he kind of had. The ice weakness that he has 2 double ice weaknesses from Sceptile and Garchomp, assuming Sceptile Mega evolved. But he has plenty of resistances. He has the Snorlax, of course. He has Feraligatr. He does get 2 more ice weaknesses out of Trevenant and Vivillon. But, Snorlax with thick fat, especially considering that ice is generally specially offensive, Snorlax can probably take those on pretty easily. So that's the Philadelphia Feraligatr, so I'm going to move on to number 4. At number 4, we have the Tulsa Talonflames, and as you can see right there, the Lucky's total score is lower for the Tulsa Talonflames than it is for the Philadelphia Feraligatrs, because I think that this team, as a whole, is a little better than PK's. Tulsa Talonflames, coached by Cuddle of Death. She has the Heatran, Ferrothorn, Latias, up in OU. Latias, of course, a Defogger. Galvantula, Salamence, and Mega Houndoom. I believe Salamence is a Defogger. Jellicent, Virizion, and Seismitoad, and then Liepard, Muck, and Dusknoir. No Rapid Spinners on this team. Only a couple potential Defoggers. However, it's a very fat team and not a lot of rock weaknesses. Galvantula and Salamence and Houndoom. That little OU core right there is weak to rock, but nothing else on the team is. Jellicent is amazing. It just is. It can wall so many Pokemon with its typing and its fatness. Seismitoad, only weak to grass. Liepard has priority with Prankster. It also has access to stuff like Fake Out. Dusknoir is fat for days. Muck has great special defense, another Cursemon. Virizion also has great special defense. That double flying weakness could pose a potential issue. However, with Heatran and Ferrothorn, Heatran more than Ferrothorn, but with those 2 Mons, flying won't be much of an issue. Ferrothorn and Heatran make a pretty good core. They're both weak to fighting. However, if you put Latias on there as well, you have a really good core overall. Heatran, of course, double resisting that fairy. The fairy weakness that you see in Liepard, you see it in Virizion, you see it in Salamence, and you see it in Latias, but you have that double resistance in Heatran, you have a resistance in Muck, and you also have a resistance in Ferrothorn. Nothing really, screaming out from this draft. I just think it's a very solid draft. It's very balanced. In terms of physically offensive Mons, you have the Ferrothorn, you have the Salamence, you have the Virizion, you have the Seismitoad, you have the Liepard, and you have the Muck, you have the Dusknoir. That's 7. In terms of specially offensive, you have the Heatran, the Latios, the Galvantula, Mega Houndoom, the Jellicent, but you know, Seismitoad can be run specially offensive, as can Virizion. Virizion is a 90-90 split in terms of attack and special attack. And I just think there's a lot of good Mons on this team, like a lot of Mons that can do a lot of different stuff. Like Liepard can, with Prankster Taunt, can prevent those hazards from being set up. The Talonflames also have Galvantula, which means that, generally speaking, nobody else has access to Sticky Web. Actually, it may be, precisely speaking, depending on all of the other Mons, because I don't remember, you know, all, you know, 100 and something Mons that got drafted. It was 12 times 16, which is 192. I don't remember all 192 Pokemon that got drafted, but not that many Pokemon get access to Sticky Web. And, you know, being potentially the only team with Sticky Web, that could pose, you know, a really big advantage to the Talonflames. But, you know, that's all I really got to say about them. It's a very solid draft, a very solid core, not a lot of, you know, outstanding weaknesses. So with that, I'm going to get on to number 3. Number 3 is the St. Louis Rampardos. As you can see, we sort of jumped up a little bit. Lucky's total score of 112 out of 120. This draft was amazing. This is one of my favorite drafts. It's actually probably my favorite draft. I don't think it's the best draft because, as you can see, it's at number 3. But I think it's probably my favorite because it has a lot of my favorite Pokemon. You have access to Mega Metagross, which is, you know, it was banned to Ubers for a while, and for good reason. It's freaking terrifying. You have Raikou, which is one of the fastest Volt Switchers in the game, and it's got great bulk to it as well on the special side. Physical, not so much. Conkeldurr, which, you know, Conkeldurr is awesome. I love Conkeldurr. In the UU tier, you have Hydreigon, which is one of the most, you know, it can do so many different things. You have Crobat, which is one of the fastest, naturally fastest Pokemon in the game with a base 130 speed. You have Vaporeon, which has base 130 HP, and, you know, it'll tank hits for days. You have Aromatisse, again, very, very fat. You have Tangrowth, which is a Regenerator Pokemon with, I believe, base 125 defense. I remember back in, I don't know if it was back in X and Y, or if it was just, you know, a while ago. Tangrowth was very common in RU as part of a Regenerator core, and you'd get it down really low, and then it would just switch out and come back with, like, you know, it regains a third of its health whenever it switches out. Then you have Omastar, which is, of course, a shell-smashing Pokemon. In NU, you have Golurk, which has, you know, maximum resistance of 3. Well, not maximum. The most in existence of 3. It's immune to electric, fighting, and normal. Of course, able to set up Stealth Rocks. Also learns Fly. I don't know why, but it does. Kecleon, one of my favorite Pokemon down in those lower tiers. Protean user with really great special bulk. And then, of course, Mesprit, which is, you know, the balance of the Lake Trio. It has 105 base attack, defense, special attack, and special defense. It gets access to Stealth Rock. It gets access to a really wide variety of moves. It gets access to U-Turn as well, so it provides some switch initiative there. No Rapid Spinners on this team. However, you got some really good defoggers. You have Crobat and Hydreigon, both of which I believe learn defog. But the other thing about it is that the team is not weak to rock, very much so. Actually, I think Crobat's the only Pokemon on the entire team that's actually weak to Rock. Everything else either resists it or is neutral to it. So Rock really not that much of an issue for this team. Mega Metagross was top priority for a lot of people, and Dan, A-Drive, coach of the St. Louis Ramparts, he managed to snag it, and now he has it. And especially with something like Raikou, with that Switch Initiative, a lot of really good Switch Initiative from this team. You see Raikou with the Volt Switch, you see Crobat, Hydreigon, and Mesprit, all with the U-turn. And you also see a lot of really good priority on this team. Kecleon gets access to Fake Out, Sucker Punch, Shadow Sneak, and probably something else. Golurk actually does not get priority. I know that Metagross gets access to Bullet Punch, and Conkeldurr gets access to Mach Punch, and maybe Bullet Punch. I know it gets Mach Punch. So you see a lot of good priority on that team. You also see, you see a super duper physically fat Mon from Tangrowth. Then you see, those potential special walls like Vaporeon. You see Assault Vesters like Conkeldurr and Hydreigon potentially. You see, Scarfers or Banders like Crobat. You see Hydreigon, which can be run like pretty much any way you want to. So overall, a very, very, very solid draft. No screaming weaknesses, nothing like that. One of my favorite drafts, probably my favorite draft. Not the best in my opinion. Very close. But, I really liked this draft. I thought it was very well done. And with that, I'm going to get on into number 2. At number 2, we have the Newcastle Nidoking. Widely regarded as one of the best drafts made. You have Mega Venusaur and Slowbro right there. Disgusting. I know, disgusting. Truly disgusting. Nothing really, can take out both of them. Because Venusaur can be run specially defensive, physically defensive, specially offensive. It can actually be run physically offensive, believe it or not. And it'll still put in some work. Regular Slowbro. Of course, Regenerator Pokemon. Pretty good typing. Has access to stuff like Calm Mind and Slack Off. Then you have Staraptor, which is, huge attack power. Access to U-turn, of course. Also has access to Reckless, Double Edge, and Brave Bird, which put in the absolute finest of work, as well as access to Close Combat, which is very rare for a flying type. Down in the UU tier, we see Arcanine, which again can be run any way you want it to. It can be run specially defensive with an Assault Vest. It can be run physically defensive with Intimidate. It can be run specially offensive. It can be run physically offensive. Choice Banded Extreme Speed that's a thing, and it does a lot of damage. Nidoqueen, of course, the female counterpart to Nidoking. Nidoqueen is, of course, a little bit bulkier, but a little bit slower and a little less offensive. However, I think that actually works to its advantage because, you can run it as defensive or especially defensive if you want to. I don't think Nidoking really can do that as well, if at all, because of, it's a lot more frail. Then you, of course, have Haxorus with that Mold Breaker. It also has Unnerve, I believe. Haxorus, of course, and for those of you who are curious, I have nothing in front of me except what you're looking at. I'm just reading this and using the knowledge that I have in my head. So anyway, you have Haxorus, which is a demon. Haxorus is a fucking demon. It has base 147 attack. It's insane. Then in Aryu, you have Scrafty, Fake Out. It has access to Drain Punch, Knock Off, Dragon Dance, which is insane. You have Sigilyph with Magic Guard. I don't think it gets Magic Bounce. I know it gets Magic Guard, so it's a very viable Life Orb type of Pokemon. You have Magneton, which recently got moved out of NU because it's too good for NU. You can run it with an Evule, which I personally prefer, but you can also run it Scarfed, you can run it Specs. It still has, even though it's not fully evolved, it still has base 120 special attack, which is very, very high. And then you get down into NU and you see Lilligant, which of course has access to Petal Dance without getting confused because it has that that ability. I don't remember what it's called, but you can't get confused. It's not Oblivious. Own Tempo, that's what it is. You have Miss Magius, which is, you know, an NU staple. 105 base, special attack, special defense, and speed. It's a ghost type. It gets fucked up by knockoff, but that's about it. And of course, adding to that, you have Armaldo, which is... it's not the best rapid spinner, as it is weak to rock. However, it's a rapid spinner. It can rapid spin. Rapid spin, of course, better than Defog. However, other potential defoggers on the team, I think Staraptor gets it, and I think Sigilyph gets it. But other than that, there's not that many options. However, overall, this team is a very good example of what I think of when I think of, you know, if you only have 12 Pokemon to choose from, you want each Pokemon to do as many different things as possible. Armaldo can be a setup sweeper, it can be supportive, it can be defensive. Miss Magius can be specially defensive, it can be Scarfed, it can be Specs. Lilligant can be a bunch of different stuff, I'm not really sure. It gets Leech Seed, so it can probably be supportive. Magneton, I already explained to you. Sigilyph, Cosmic Power, Stored Power, that's a set. Scrafty, you've seen Assault Vest, Scrafty, and stuff like VGC. Haxorus. Haxorus is a nuclear bomb. You just need to send it in and it'll start wrecking shop. Nidoqueen, I explained to you guys. Arcanine can do a bunch of everything. So, this is a really, really, really good example of Pokemon that can do a bunch of different stuff. They can fill a lot of different roles, and I think that's ideal when you only have 12 to choose from. However, just barely a better draft in my opinion, and in my opinion the best draft is number 1. The Bristol City Blazekins in at number 1. There's the only reason, well, not the only reason, the primary reason that I was 100% sure that I felt that this draft was better than the Newcastle Nidokings was because of Hitmontop. It is one of the most reliable rapid spinners in the game, especially in those lower tiers. But anyway, on to the rest of it. You of course see Dragonite, which can do whatever the fuck you want. Scizor doesn't even have to Mega Evolve. Choice Banded Bullet Punch will rip through fairy types all day. Then of course you have my Scizor set that I like to run. The neutrally defensive, HP invested, Swords Dance Roost, Bullet Punch, Bug Bite set. I love that set. It's extremely difficult to one-shot, and with access to Roost, it just makes it all the worse. Then you see Thunderous Therian, which is super duper duper fast. I think it has base 145 in either special attack or speed. I can't remember which. But obviously very fast, very hard hitting special attacker. You have Azelf. Azelf is it the bulk? No, Azelf is the hard hitting of the trio. It has base 125 attack and special attack. Then you have Suicune, which is of course, you know, fucking Suicune. Everybody hates it because of how fat it is. You have Roserade, which can do a bunch of different stuff. You have Ambipom, which runs through RU all the time because it has, you know, Life Orb, Fake Out, U-turn, Knock Off, insert fourth move here. You heard me say that a lot on, I think, was it Tuesday or was it earlier today? Either way, you already heard me say that a lot, how Ambipom runs through with those 3 moves and insert fourth move there. You see Typhlosion scarfed into Eruption, that'll fuck some people up. It's fucked me up a few times. Hitmontop, of course, the star of my RU bulky method team building. You have Rotom Fan, of course, a great Scarfer with Air Slash, but it also has access to that Volt Switch for Switch Initiative. You have Weezing, one of the best physical walls in the game, and then you have Caracosta, which I don't really understand, but it's there. There's nothing you can do about it. I know it's a Shell Smasher with Aqua Jet, so it has priority. I remember I ran a set a while ago that was Weakness Policy Shell Smash with Aqua Jet, because then you'd be at +4 from a super effective hit, because it has Sturdy, and I don't remember if it worked or not. I don't think it did, but I know it fucked some stuff up. But like I said, I love this draft. I think this is such a good draft. And it's very tight balanced. That's the other thing about it. Like, immediately you see, just from the top row, 2 big ice weaknesses. The double weakness for Dragonite, and then the single weakness for Thunder's Therian. But then you see Suicune and UU, which will take ice hits forever. It'll take them forever. It's Suicune. Then you see, the fire weakness of Scizor, but Typhlosion has access to Flash Fire now. That ability has been released, so you have a fire immunity right there. You see you see a lot when you look at these drafts. I don't really know how to explain it, but I think that this was definitely my favorite draft, and I think it was the best. Sorry, not my favorite. It was one of my favorite drafts, but it's definitely what I believe to be the best draft. So, I want to thank you guys so very much for watching. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. It's very much greatly appreciated. But, make sure to share, retweet, favorite, if Twitter and YouTube, all that sort of shenanigans. But with that, I'm going to get up out of here. Best of luck out there. I will see you all soon. Goodbye.